The following video contains the News 5 broadcast, The Labor Day Storm, Tragedy and Triumph, that originally aired September 14, 1998, minus the commercials. In addition to that broadcast, this tape contains additional excerpts from News 5 coverage in the hours and days following the storm.
There's a severe thunderstorm watch in effect for all of central New York. That is until 5 a.m. this morning.
Oh, God, I thought we were dead. I'm telling, I thought the whole roof come off.
This is a News 5 special, The Labor Day Storm, Tragedy and Triumph.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Ron Curtis.
And I'm Maureen Green. It was supposed to be the final day of a long holiday weekend, the last one before the arrival of fall and another long Syracuse winter.
But Central New Yorkers never had a chance to sleep in Labor Day morning. Many of us were jolted awake 1 week ago today by booming thunder and the sound of hurricane-force winds.
It was the start of a night and a week to remember.
Oh, God, I thought we were dead.
I thought the world was ending.
I just heard a loud noise and rushed to put windows down. The water was coming in and heard crashing and looked out and the barn was gone.
Just an amazing display of lightning. Just the sound of the thunder as well. You could really tell that it was a big collision in air masses that was taking place.
It's a situation where I've declared a state of emergency. That means that people should stay in their homes, should watch television, listen to their radio, do whatever they have to do until we can give them a better update.
Stay indoors. 80,000 people without power this morning. NYMO is working to get that power back on, but they tell us it may be as much as a week before some people have juice back on in their homes and apartments.
It doesn't appear that the fair will have its 12th day on Labor Day.
Good evening. I'm meteorologist Kathy Orr. Behind me, I have the Labor Day storm Doppler radar. We started off at 9 p.m. on Sunday, and you can see the explosions of storms early Labor Day morning. The storms came across the lake, a series of severe thunderstorms, and they formed what we call a bow echo. You can see the bright reds and oranges. This storm was devastating throughout central New York. It had the strength of a moderate to severe tornado, but it was determined by the National Weather Service office on Monday as they surveyed the damage that it was from straight-line thunderstorm winds. As these thunderstorms crossed the region over the Onondaga County region and most of central New York, there were downbursts of air, straight-line winds, most of the destruction in a west-east orientation, and that's why it was determined a derecho, the Spanish word for straight. This storm started in Niagara County, exploded across the New York State region, and ended off Cape Ann, Massachusetts by 6 a.m. Labor Day morning. Devastating indeed, and something we will not soon forget throughout the central New York region. We can also call it another storm of the century. Now back to Ron and Maureen.
Thank you, Kathy. Well, certainly by the early morning light, it was clear this was no ordinary summer thunderstorm.
No, only from the air could one grasp the full scope of this disaster. Our Chopper 5 camera provided pictures we often associate with the aftermath of hurricanes in the south and tornadoes in the Midwest. But these wrecked buildings and toppled trees were in our own community, from places like Port Byron and Syracuse's southwest side to the State Fair.
And the fair was poised to set an attendance record thanks to great weather for 11 days.
But as our Matt Mulcahy reports, the Labor Day storms brought an end to the fair and to 2 lives.
A windsnapped tree crushed what had been the place Beryl Stone lived during his visit to the fair. Now it's the place where he died. He was sleeping when the storm cut through. The 75-mile-an-hour winds collapsed tents and blew the roof off the dairy building, collapsing the tent and killing John Perry where he had been sleeping.
We ain't gonna die. I said, no, I have to just start praying. And I'm holding out in the door going.
Hundreds of evacuated fair campers survived the violent force of the winds and rain by holding on to each other for dear life.
We're hanging out of the sides of our camper. And thank God we're between two big ones, because we would have probably run over ourselves.
As you all know, a tornado touched down at the New York State Fairgrounds.
What Fair Director Peter Campasili called a tornado turned out to be straight-line winds. But the language doesn't really matter to the victims who endure the fright and pain of the destruction.
Doesn't matter how much you do. When God decides that there's going to be a natural disaster, it's in his hands, and we're very thankful that it was just 2 casualties, because if it ever happened during the day, who knows how many.
If the storm had hit with the shoulder-to-shoulder record crowds we've seen all week, it could have been much worse. But instead, the tornado made its mark at 1:20 in the morning on Labor Day 1998.
Now, if you still hold advance sale tickets for the fair, you can mail them to the fair and get complimentary tickets for next year. Incidentally, the Labor Day race and demolition derby have been rescheduled for October 4th.
Now, the university area of the city was another hard-hit neighborhood.
The university's South Campus housing took a big hit. Roofs were ripped off on some student apartments. Hundreds of students were evacuated, and structural damage was reported in 10 buildings on campus.
And the storm made life in one of the city's more economically disadvantaged neighborhoods even tougher.
And as Donna Spezielli tells us, the storm also damaged a center of the community's life.
Sometimes God works in strange ways, not even a church immune from the storm's destruction. St. Lucy's steeple ripped right to the ground. Things that should have been strong weakened by Mother Nature's grip. Peter Starmer is visiting his daughter and granddaughter. This is his car.
Well, I already reported to the insurance people, and they've been working all night, and we won't mention names. And anyway, they've been getting calls from Syracuse all night, they say. And so there's going to be a long lineup for new windshields and new glass, so I don't know how long it will be.
How long will it take to right buildings or to get things that once stood tall back to normal again? And business could have been booming in a lot of places. Here at the Sears hardware store in Westphal Plaza, they were letting in people one by one for fear of looting.
Next one.
While they can bring out the worst in people, disasters have a way of bringing out the best, too.
I've been here for 7 years. People are like more than friends and customers. I'm just here to see if they need any help, any candles, berries.
On this Labor Day, we labored in ways we never imagined. But you won't find many people who complain about the lack of a holiday.
That's all I can say. And most of us still alive, so we can go on with our lives. I'm going to just pray for those who didn't make it.
Donna Spezielli, News 5.
Now, Syracuse wasn't the only place hit hard by the Labor Day storm.
Virtually everywhere you looked in the suburbs and neighboring counties, more downed power lines and trees and tales of survival. We'll have that, as well as the latest on efforts to restore power.
The destruction from the Labor Day storm cut a line from west to east.
One of the areas our News 5 cameras reached was the Auburn area. That's where we found lots of damage along Route 5 just outside that city. This was the scene at the BJ's Wholesale Club store. Getting around in Cayuga County was as tough as it was anywhere else. Our Brenda Tyler found a Cayuga County community struggling with a big loss.
The Federated Baptist Church was straight in line with the storm. Now its steeple lays in what once was the center of worship. This church was a piece of history. Parishioners gathered here since the mid-1800s. For Walt Schoonmaker, it was much, much more. His great-great-grandfather built this church back in 1844.
Built many of the buildings around here, and this was one of them, I'm sure. When he built it, it was probably kind of a matter of pride for him, because it's kind of a piece of artwork.
But the artwork is now shattered, like much of this community. The destruction stretches across the town. The focus now, though, is to recover. Crews are working overtime. Utility trucks line village streets. People who don't have power are getting inventive. Rich Stevens is using a mobile home to run electricity to 2 houses.
How is it working?
Great. Got the refrigerator on, local news, the basic necessities until they get the power back up.
As fast as they can pick up the debris, workers are getting rid of it.
For many people, the road to recovery will take weeks and weeks. They're dealing with things like this. Snapped trees just laying in their front lawns. And check out over here. There is so much debris, you'd hardly be able to tell there's a house under there.
Paul Simpkin is assessing the damage for the American Red Cross Disaster Relief. He's knocking on doors and making sure everyone is okay. The miracle here, no one was hurt. The sign in front of the church puts it best. This is just the building. The people who worship here are the church. In Port Byron, Brenda Tyler, News 5.
Niagara Mohawk has had more than 800 crews, its employees, and crews from across the Northeast here to restore power.
Crews from Canada, Pennsylvania, and Connecticut came to help. Niagara Mohawk says that while the January ice storm that hit the North Country knocked out power to 140,000 businesses and homes, at its height, 250,000 customers here in central New York were without power during the Labor Day storm. It took nearly 6 weeks to get everyone back online, and the ice storm, largely because it was spread out over a huge area, and NYMO had to rebuild nearly its entire system. Here in just 1 week, almost everyone has power back. NYMO says the few customers still without power are generally those with extensive damage that requires additional work or the work of a private electrical contractor. News 5 meteorologist Bob Van Dillen brought us first word of the impending storm, and meteorologist Tom Hoff was first on the air with news of its impact. We'll hear from them in a moment.
And long lines form as central New Yorkers try to get emergency help to replace food lost by power outages.
News 5 meteorologists were on top of this story from the beginning. Bob Van Dillen reported at 11 we were in for a wild night, and Tom Hoff was the first on the air in central New York with an eyewitness account. And Tom, it was a wild night outside and in the newsroom listening to reports on the police scanner, wasn't it?
That it was, Maureen. Just an amazing night overall. You know, one of the things that we learn in meteorology school is that most of your severe weather occurs during the hottest part of the day, during the afternoon. Well, that certainly wasn't the case with the storm moving in between 1 and 1:30. Very similar to the big storm that affected the Adirondacks back in July of 1995. And another similarity between the two storms, and this is a very good point to look at for the future, most of the time cold fronts move from west to east, but this particular front, like the one in July of 95, came in from more of a northerly direction. We refer to those as backdoor cold fronts. So if there's any lessons learned, beware of the backdoor cold front. The other amazing thing about the storm was the actual speed that it moved across the state at about 50 miles per hour. Just an amazing, amazing story, probably something that we won't see again in our lifetimes, at least we hope so anyway. Now, as dawn broke on Labor Day morning, the common thought was that we had been hit by tornadoes, but that was not the case. In fact, we were hit by straight-line winds. Now, meteorologist Bob Van Dillen with more on that.
Last night, the unofficial summer ended just as it began, with tornado warnings posted for central New York. Once the sun came up, the picture became clear. Something roared through the area with so much power, it ripped up 100-year-old trees and knocked out power for hundreds of thousands. But was it really a tornado? The Binghamton National Weather Service says no, not at least in Onondaga County. Steve Kuhl of the National Weather Service was surveying the damage at the state fairgrounds today, and he believes the heaviest damage was done by straight-line winds from severe thunderstorms.
Since we had straight-line winds of over 100 miles per hour here last night, it really didn't take a tornado to topple a tree of this size. Check it out, it really changes the landscape around here.
Straight-line winds, or derechos, form from an air mass at the very top of the thunderstorm. The air mass cools so quickly and becomes so heavy that the cloud's updraft can't hold it anymore, and it comes crashing down as a downdraft with great speed. Once the downdraft hits the ground, it rushes out at the surface at speeds as fast as 115 miles per hour, the strength of a hurricane or a weak tornado. Meteorologist Bob Van Dillen, News 5.
Well, for many people faced with the prospect of a lengthy power outage, the scramble for alternatives to Niagara Mohawk was on.
Generators were a hot commodity at any store that managed to open its doors. For many, the generators were not just a convenience to keep the lights on, but a necessity to keep sump pumps running and basements dry.
For others, there was another scramble on, one for aid to help replace food spoiled by the power outage. And Donna Adamo explains.
The vicious storm made its path across central New York early Monday morning. 4 days later, a new path is formed, this one in front of the War Memorial in downtown Syracuse, where thousands of people are waiting for help. And while patience may be a virtue, Dan Mattis's is growing thin.
And they're gonna, I guess they're giving you $3 a day for how long? I don't, and you wait and you wait and you wait.
And processing each application takes time.
And then they'll give you, and you can come back tomorrow priority-wise, and they'll hand out your voucher.
We have 31,000 food stamp recipients in Onondaga County. The benefits were just issued in early September. Many made purchases from those benefits, and they lost their food because of the storm.
More than 2,000 people have already been given replacement food stamps or food vouchers. Officials say the lines will continue.
And you'll be here today till what time?
Until the last person leaves.
In Syracuse, Donna Adamo, News 5.
And when we come back, the National Guard invades.
But these citizen soldiers are armed with chainsaws instead of assault rifles. Their story when we return.
Fortunately, Central New Yorkers were never alone trying to triumph over this tragedy. Utility crews from across the region and Canada came to help.
And National Guard troops from across the state showed up to assist, and our Matt Mulcahy caught up with them when they arrived.
The Guard members mustered at DeWitt headquarters, arriving from all across the state. 200 soldiers dressed in battle fatigues and armed with chainsaws, a ready-to-work labor force.
Just taking care of the downed trees and initially getting organized and get broke down into teams, and then just going out there and work.
Let's go!
Acting on orders, these civilians turned soldiers step aside from their professional lives to help put the community back on its feet. The troops say the Army is all about hurry up and wait. Once the convoy hits the road, there's time to reflect on the family they've left behind.
My wife is pregnant, and I didn't really want to leave. When I left my house, my wife looked at me and said, she's really proud of what I'm doing, and it is really great that I have a chance to go help these people.
I'm sitting down. The people desperately need the tools and the man-hours to get out from under the weight of nature's force. It started raining where these National Guard members are working right now, but the bad weather is no hindrance to them. You see, a lot of these National Guardsmen were part of the North Country ice storm recovery, where temperatures hovered around 0 degrees. The work will go on for days, from sunup to sundown. For people enduring the storm, that help arrived just in time.
Thank God they're here. If they weren't here, I don't know what we'd do.
Another mayor.
With the sun shining, you couldn't tell there was a blackout when Christine Pompano and her family met Governor Pataki as he looked at storm damage near her home.
You can grab the iron board.
But just a few hours later, the effects of the power outage were clear as she and her husband Mike returned to a dark house after doing laundry at her grandfather's. Tasks like laundry have only been made harder. Like many, Christine is hoping for a quick end.
Clothes, I got them all hanging up now. I got enough for 3 days. Enough to finish out the week anyway.
But the Pompanos, like thousands of others, lit candles.
Just the best we can.
The family is getting a little extra help from 10-year-old Lakota's flashlight and a work light Christine's husband has rigged to a battery.
I had it laying around, so I figured I might as well use it for something. Usually put it on the car for that, and I work on the car at night.
More than 100,000 people are still without power. The Pompanos say they don't expect to have power for another week. and say they're planning ahead.
Same thing as always. Just finish cooking up the food, making sure these guys got ready, something to do in the morning, get up, go to work.
For News 5, Mike Sigler.
Central New York businesses were either booming or struggling because of the storm.
And our Brenda Tyler caught up with people who haven't stopped working since the storm hit.
There you go, ma'am. You have a good day.
Cash registers at Denny's are ringing up sale after sale. People are packing the restaurant, dishing out big bucks in turn for a warm, hot meal. Michael Francis's family came to the restaurant for breakfast. They have no food and no power.
Can't cook, you gotta eat. Kids are hungry, you know, and some of the things you keep, like milk and stuff like that, can't keep it around, so, and they gotta eat.
It's chaotic in the kitchen. Employees are working 16-hour days just to feed the hungry crowds. By 10:30 in the morning, they also filled more than 300 takeout orders. Manager Rick Martinez says he's averaging about 4 hours of sleep.
So as far as financially and business-wise, we are doing very good. This is probably the busiest week we've had in probably years, a couple years at least.
Hotels are booked solid too. Guests are passing the time playing ping pong, watching Mark McGuire highlights, or reading the newspaper.
Hotel managers say the rooms are so booked up, they're having to send business travelers as far north as Watertown to find a place to stay.
Megan Hunter is the manager of Mike Rotel Inn.
We were swamped with the business from the state fair, so that kept us busy, 100% occupancy, and then we took a breath, and then this hit, so we're swamped again, which is good for business. We're not complaining.
Maybe not, but some people who can't cook in their own homes are complaining. After all, you can only eat out so many times before you break your wallet.
We want to thank you for buying this video because part of the proceeds will benefit the American Red Cross.
Now, what you have just watched was a News 5 special we aired 1 week after the storm. Time did not permit us to rebroadcast all the stories we did concerning the storm. So, we have included additional reports broadcast on News 5 in the days following that Labor Day storm.
You know, WTVH stayed on the air throughout the storm, but at its height, more than 250,000 customers were without power, so there's a good chance most of you missed Keith Copeland and Tom Hoff's early coverage Labor Day morning.
6:41 on News 5 this morning. Our continuing coverage of the Labor Day storm of 1998 continuing here this morning. We'll get to some more weather information for you in just a few moments. First, though, if you're just joining us, here's what's going on. Those powerful storms that certainly woke you up last night moved through the area. State of emergency remaining in effect for most of the TV5 viewing area. You can see the reason why. Down trees, down limbs, down power lines. In fact, lots of homes suffering some kind of damage, whether it was from the hail or those downed trees. Roads pretty much impassable throughout Onondaga County in central New York, Oneida County, Madison County. Lots of places throughout our viewing area dealing with it this morning. And if it's not down trees and power lines, well, then it is flooding. That rain that came this morning, just too much for most of the storm sewers to handle. And as a result, you see that lots of cars stalled out there, folks trying to make their way through. Best advice this morning from all emergency management officials that we've heard from points east, northwest, and south. Stay out of the, stay in your home, stay out of your car, stay off the roads, just stay close to home, don't go outside. Very dangerous out there.
Yeah, the good news, the worst of the storminess is now over, but we're not entirely out of the woods yet. In fact, as we look at our up to the second radar, a little bit of concern out to our west right now. We still have some fairly healthy cells out there across parts of Cayuga County, out through Yates County as well. They're drifting on off to the east, and this line that's to the west of Toronto, that's the actual cold front. So we're not going to find conditions improving here in any great way until that cold front sags to our south by about 1 or 2 o'clock this afternoon. So still the potential for some more small to medium-sized thunderstorms here through the morning hours, but again over the afternoon conditions will begin to improve, and even with the thunderstorms that still could affect us, they'll be nothing like last night's 77-mile-per-hour wind producers. 1 inch hail and about an inch or so of rain in about a 50-minute period here last night. By far the worst storms to affect any part of upstate New York since July 15th of '95, when the big microburst came eastbound through Jefferson, Lewis counties and up into the Adirondacks.
Many communities imposed curfews in the wake of the storm, among them the town of Manlius.
And our Catherine Craig went out on patrol one night.
Putting themselves at risk by coming out in the darkness like this. You can come on a road or on the sidewalk.
Officer Greg Armstrong is a 6-year veteran of the town of Manlius Police. But since Monday's storm, streets that have been so familiar to him now seem foreign.
You can come right upon one of these wires and not even know it.
All throughout the town, lights are out, wires are down, making it a dangerous place. Officer Armstrong says that's why the curfew is being enforced.
I think a lot of people don't understand the severity and the potential for danger by being out in the darkness like this.
During his 12-hour shift, Officer Armstrong isn't just putting the spotlight on devastated neighborhoods, he's also checking in on businesses, making sure no one's looting stores and owners are not staying open past curfew. On a rainy night like tonight, not many people are out, but for those who are, they're aware Officer Armstrong is there, checking in on them.
Are you guys on the road with the curfews and everything getting tighter?
It's going pretty well. Pretty much everyone's adhering to it.
He says if everyone does that, it would make cleanup go a lot faster.
Hope everybody does take care to heed the times of the curfew.
Central New Yorkers did their best to cope with the storm. Some were lucky enough to stay in their darkened homes,
while others had to get by in shelters. We have several reports, beginning with Donna Speziale.
What's your name? Do you have bread?
People need a lot right now, but most of all, they need to get back to normal. Not even grocery shopping is the same. With no lights or freezers, PNC is operating in front of their Manlius store. The old-fashioned way, no cash registers or computers. Jerry Brown needed to get some food. This is her second day without power. We followed Jerry to her Manlius apartment. She's been babysitting and doing her best to keep Heidi occupied. Jerry misses watching TV. For now, she'll have to settle for the radio.
I'm married and I have 3 kids.
Jerry's managed to keep some perishables in a cooler, but everything is getting old.
It's frustrating, it is, because I feel kind of, now what can I do? I like to well, actually, this morning we washed our hair in the sink. We had hot water, so we did wash our hair and try to conserve the water as much as we can.
And she's concerned about her fish. Instead of a pump, she pours in water. All around Manlius, there's a lot of cleaning to do. Trees are still downed, as well as power lines. These teenagers hope it won't be too much longer. After all, it's kind of tough living without all the things you're used to.
Not being able to listen to music or get on the computer, watch TV, I guess. Just because it's the last few days of summer. There's really nothing to do.
The school year hasn't begun for these children, but they're spending a lot of time in one anyway. Salem Heights Elementary opened its doors for people who've been dealt a bad hand by Mother Nature. Edith Senior's Southside house was hit hard. Now she's meeting new neighbors.
Very nice. I was surprised, weren't you? We get good food.
Edith and dozens of others who survived the storm now call this place home.
Because we may need to use these bowls again for cereal tomorrow morning for breakfast, would you please return the bowls to us?
It's been the only place where many have found a friendly face while getting a hot meal.
What else would they like?
Volunteers say it can be hard for people to ask for a helping hand. Dick Trudeau helps the Red Cross and says that's what he's there for.
Listen to them and let them explain their problems to us, and we try and have sympathy for them.
While Edith plays Blue Skies on the piano for her new friends, she's hoping Mother Nature is listening in as well.
And a good one for the storm, Blue Sky.
The damage was spread over a wide area, and we know many of you called in asking when we would get your pictures on the air.
Well, unfortunately, there was so much damage over so wide an area, it was just impossible to cover every neighborhood. But our Matt Mulcahy did get to Madison County, where the destruction and the determination to overcome it was no different than it was in Syracuse.
A giant tree fell on the longtime home of the Elliott family, but friends have now cleared it away. It's been a rough 3 days, beginning with Ted Elliott's frantic ride home from the night shift.
Just made sure my family was safe. That was it. Devastating.
His family means everything to him as the storm wears on into day 3. The dream of selling this house to move out to the country is now on hold. But while Ted Elliott is tired, his wife beams optimism of a family lucky to make it through.
I don't think there's really been a challenge. You know, the Lord's been good to us. We just really feel blessed with this whole thing.
Water! We got some free water here.
The Elliots aren't the only family in need in the area. Oneida's water is bad, so boiled and bottled water is the only way to go. Yet another inconvenience brought on by the storm of '98.
Well, a few Central New Yorkers were lucky to escape the Labor Day storm with their lives and the clothes on their backs.
Donna Spezialy introduces us to a Syracuse woman who, days after the storm, watched her home come tumbling down.
It's not an unusual sight to see tree trimmers all across Syracuse this week, trimming and chopping what Mother Nature destroyed. What is peculiar is to see trimmers picking trees from the second floor of a house.
My house just crashed, you know, and it was like very scary. It was, you know.
Donna Stevens could do nothing but watch as the house she lived in for 26 years was torn apart. She was sleeping when the storm hit, but luckily her son woke her up for a phone call that she answered downstairs.
Thank God he was there, you know. I would have been dead. I know I would have been dead because I was so tired, you know, and where that came through is right in my room.
Neither Donna nor her son were injured. They were able to retrieve a few things out of the house, but 26 years of memories and belongings are gone forever.
As demolitions go, this is only the beginning. The city has a long list of homes and businesses that are going to have to be destroyed because they're just not safe.
Buildings like this one on West Belden Avenue are accidents waiting to happen. Luckily, this one was vacant, but many people will have to find new places to live. Donna Stevens says that's okay.
I gotta look at it as maybe a new start in life. Because I've got good memories, but I have some bad memories, you know.
And perhaps Donna's mother put it best. It's a lifetime destroyed. Thank God it's not a life. Donna Spezialy, News 5.
Sidewalks blocked by debris and downed power lines and damaged school buildings played havoc with the start of the new school year.
Hardest hit was the city of Syracuse. Keith Copeland toured Fowler High School with School Superintendent Tom Kappa.
This was supposed to be the first day of class for Fowler High School students, but instead the hallways are dark. The power outage only part of the problem here.
Come on in. This is one of the worst areas.
Superintendent Tom Kappa took us on a tour today. The rain that came with the hurricane-force winds poured into this building, and each of its 3 floors have suffered heavy damage. Ceiling tiles have caved in and litter the floors. The rugs are soaked. Many of the textbooks and papers are ruined. Even the school's new computer room is drenched. And all this mess is going to take some time to clean up.
We're estimating it's a minimum of 2 to 3 weeks, assuming we can get materials to do the entire cleanup inside the Fowler High School, replace ceiling tiles, and then to test all the electrical and heating, ventilating, and air conditioning systems. Try to get that musty odor out of the building as quickly as possible.
Part of the problem can be found on the roof. Contractors were doing some scheduled roofing work up here when the storm hit, and continues to enter the building drip by drip. Of course, damage caused by the water is the big issue inside, but another big issue that they're dealing with here can't be seen by the naked eye. You need to use your nose for this one. It's the smell. A musty smell caused by wet rugs and no ventilation system in the sealed building. For other city schools, the issue continues to be side streets still blocked by debris, too dangerous for walkers to negotiate. But in case your child thinks he's making out on the deal and getting extra days off, think again.
What very well will probably happen in Syracuse is we will have to make up those days in some of these vacations, whether they be Christmas, maybe a Thanksgiving day, February break, but we'll have to make up some days. That's the way I'm looking at it right now.
School officials plan to check all buildings and will soon make a final decision on when to start school. One thing, however, is certain. Along with the 3 R's of reading, writing, and arithmetic, they will be dealing with another one here, namely repairs. Keith Copeland, News 5.
Although school resumed 8 days after the storm in Syracuse, Fowler students will be sharing Grant Middle School while repairs are made to the high school. When Syracuse rolled back its curfew, the Carousel Center was able to stay open late.
And as David Muir found out, it became a great escape for many tired and drained Central New Yorkers.
Brenda and Dana Bigelow spent their night at the mall. They wanted to see a movie to escape from the real-life drama unfolding in Central New York.
There you go. Thank you.
The Bigelows live on Syracuse's west side, and like most of us, they weren't able to escape the storm's path. They say they have good reason to be at the mall.
To get out of the house. We were going crazy.
Everybody is in turmoil and just really having a hard time with it.
So you need an escape tonight.
To get away from it all, sure.
Okay, there you go. Thank you very much.
The food court was full of people and their stories about how they got through the Labor Day storm. Joseph Kozeski's family also spent time in the dark. He was looking for one thing at the mall.
Civilization. Yeah, the rain and the rotten weathers, we've been cooped up, and, you know, we had our power out for a little bit, but we just wanted to get out and see some people.
Both he and his wife, Michelle, teach at schools in Syracuse, and they're preparing for the first day, whenever that comes.
I think a lot of the kids are going to be scared that it'll happen again, especially on the west side. They got hit real bad, and they don't have power yet, so those are all the kids I teach. So hopefully it'll be over soon.
Now, although some churches were hard hit by the storm, the physical damage did not rob parishioners of their spiritual strength.
Now, the steeple on St. Lucy's Church was blown off by Monday's storm. That had parishioners looking for a new place to worship. Services were held at the Parent Liaison School on Gifford Street. Folding chairs were set up for the Mass. To help, Bishop James Moynihan presided over the services.
And in Port Byron, one couple opened their home to parishioners left without a place to worship. Catherine Craig was there.
Outside, you could hear parishioners singing from an unlikely place. Elmer and Shirley Kilmer opened up their newly built home with open arms.
This seemed to be the thing to do. We've got the room, doesn't hurt anything.
Oh, gracious God, in the midst of the tragedy that we have experienced.
Some 50 parishioners worshipped at the Weedsport House after their church was destroyed. Monday's storm battered the Federated Church. Wood and glass laid all around. From the sky, you could see the steeple brought to the ground. But from this rubble, Reverend William Tabor found stained glass hands of Jesus. He believed a miracle happened and his congregation would have somewhere to worship soon. This house has become a holy place, not your usual setting for service. For many parishioners here, it doesn't matter where you are. The community makes up the church.
And as we look around this sanctuary,
amidst the wood planks of the cellar, parishioners gave thanks and said prayers. Mary Lou Forgum says she misses the church she's belonged to for decades.
But we are the church, and we've got to be the church and go ahead and go on with what God wants us to do.
It's a feeling Reverend Tabor echoes.
The church is not a building, the church is not a steeple, the church is not a resting place, the church is the people.
The holy man preached from a makeshift pulpit, thanking God his congregation could overcome such tragedy. In Weedsport, Catherine Craig, News 5.
Thank you for joining us. We want to express our thanks to all the people who pitched in the hours and days after the storm to help Central New York get back on its feet.
From the emergency service people like police, fire, and ambulance crews,
to the National Guard, utility crews, and public works crews who cleared the debris and restored power.
And the disaster relief services like the Red Cross, Salvation Army, and others who provide emergency shelter and meals.
And all of you who are not in any organization, but kept your cool, your patience, and helped your family and neighbors get through this crisis. From all of us at TV5, thank you.
God wanted my son and I to live, but he doesn't want me to live here.